Welcome and bienvenidos, everybody. We're glad you joined us here at the City Hall live stream event. We're going to be discussing the city's road bond project and all things transportation, traffic, mobility, safety. My name is Jeff Barton. I'll be your moderator for today. And we're live at City Hall on Center Street in downtown Kyle. So if you're listening to this and you're not here yet, feel free to come and join us. We'll be taking questions in person. But if you're watching online, you can ask questions too. We hope you will, in fact. We are live on the city's Facebook page. We're live on the city's YouTube page. Some of you may be watching on the website, which is kyleroadbonds.com. So you can look for a QR code or you can sign in under the comments to ask questions. We're going to start with a few just general questions and conversation about where we are and progress, when you might expect a few roads to be finished, and then we're going to get to later what kind of disruption people can expect as traffic comes online, as roads come online, and take questions from the audience. So we expect to have, we have a few questions already coming in, and we'll get to those quickly. With us today, are the mayor, Travis Mitchell. Welcome, Mayor. Glad to have you. And the city manager, Brian Langley. As well, we've got the city's new Transportation and Public Works Director, Mike Trimble. Welcome. And the consulting engineer and bond program manager for the city of Kyle on this road bond project, Rick Latt. So thank you all for taking time to be here with everybody today. Mayor, let's start with you. I'm old, but I can remember way long ago, back in 2022, when the city decided to put a record bond proposal on the ballot. And Kyle citizens responded by passing this road bond package we're here to discuss today. Talk to us a little bit about what the council was thinking of, what were the ideas behind this road bond package, and what was and maybe is your vision for transportation in the city.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak on a topic that I love. I think it's part of what makes me a little bit nerdy. I really geek out on road bond projects and infrastructure improvements. If you were to survey folks today and ask them what's the most important issue facing the city of Kyle, they would say transportation infrastructure. And there are a lot of issues, water being one of them, as well as pedestrian infrastructure and park improvements and many other facets of local government that are pressing down on our growing city. But probably no issue rises to the surface of people's everyday mind and affects their quality of life quite like a smooth road with low traffic as compared to an old bumpy road without the proper lanes and intersection improvements to cause delays. And I think our community, as it has grown, has faced an increasing amount of frustration over the fact that our transportation network needs a major upgrade. One thing that's very important to understand, you don't build a road in a day. The amount of time that it takes to put together a true reconstruction project or to pave roads, new roadways and new pathways for people to get into and out of their neighborhoods is a years-long process. And so we've known that the growth was coming and have been making preparations for that now since before the pandemic in reality. The 2022 road bond was just step 3 out of 10. Frankly, it wasn't even step 1. We started our engineering on these roads and selecting of these roads going all the way back to 2020. So these projects they're not just road projects that we're just thinking about. They're actually very important road projects that we've been working on for a long time. And what I will say is that, over the course of the next 18 to 24 months, the city of Kyle is going to go under construction. And when I say that, I mean it just the way that it sounds. The whole town is about to go under construction. We passed in 2022 an historic $294 million roads bond, and that's 9 or 10, depending on how you count the roads. Different 8, some people say 8, it's different sections of roads, but east, west, north, and south, major reconstruction, intersection improvements on most of the main arterial roads that people drive every single day. We are not doing these roads one at a time. We are cultivating, acquiring the right-of-way, doing the engineering work, and getting ready to start construction. The first project just went off, but over the next 18 months, there's going to be many, many more projects that will break ground. So the complaint has been, and this is what I said yesterday to a man, the complaint has been, why aren't you working to improve our roads? And that complaint is going to transition to, what are you doing about all this road construction? We think that's the natural place for us to go. And so the next, as you mentioned, the next problem we're going to face is how do we navigate and get our community from place to place while making all these major investments?
Thank you, Mayor. And Brian, as city manager, I remember you came to Kyle as this was already kicking off and just kind of got thrown into the frying pan. What a way to be welcomed to the city. You heard the mayor talk about it's a record bond package. So how does the city begin to get its arms around and manage something like this?
Yeah, it's a lot. Well, thank you, Jeff, and that was a great introduction, Mayor, of all the different projects that we have. It's a challenge, but it's also very exciting to be part of a city that's really has so many projects moving forward all at the same time. It's a chance to really do something transformative for the community. So that's one of the things that attracted me to Kyle, and to be part of something like that is really exciting for us. So we've really had to assemble a strong team to be successful with that. We have Mike Trimble, who's our new Director of Transportation and Public Works, as you introduced. He's been here just a short amount of time, but he has hit the ground running. We also have Rick with our engineering consultant group that's helping us manage the projects. We also have a whole project delivery team that's been organized under our department directors and various staff members to make sure we're on top of it. We meet at least weekly, sometimes many times per week, to talk about these projects. Right-of-way acquisition is another component of these projects that are it's really important. It's one of those things you don't think a lot about when you're looking at roads, but it's incredibly important to make sure you acquire the property in a fair, transparent way, but an expeditious way to move the projects along. If you don't have the property, you can't build the road. So we're moving very quickly on all of those different fronts and staying very focused to make sure that we're moving the projects forward. But it's definitely an exciting time, lots of different pieces to it.
As people come into the audience, there's a question box here, so feel free to write your questions and drop them off, and Kara will pass them up to me. And again, those of you at home can fill out questions on the website or one of the platforms, and we'll get to those as well. Mike, the city manager just talked about you joining the team, and I'm sure you're still getting your arms around this, but you're kind of the point person on many of these projects. Can residents expect to see any of these roads actually get completed soon? We just heard how long it takes. Where on the horizon are we about delivery of the first road?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Jeff. And I'm just excited to be here. I kind of jumped into the frying pan as well on the bond program, but it's been exciting to work on it so far. So yes, we are under construction, as the mayor said, on Marketplace, which is a great improvement, 4-lane roadway that's going to be from 1626 over to Kohler's Crossing. And we anticipate having that completed by July. So we're really excited about that. And we have a couple projects right on its heels to go out to bid. We're going to be going out to bid with our Kohler's to Seton project, as well as our BB project, the west part of that. And we'll be going out to bid here in the next couple of weeks. And so we'll be getting construction on that in a couple of months in the summer as well. So you're going to start to see, just like the mayor said, a lot of projects going into construction, but then you'll start to see projects completed as well as Marketplace, and then Center Street will be completed in 2026, and then you'll start to see a lot of these projects come to completion as we get through 26 and into 27. And so I definitely want to say 2026 is going to be the year of construction. And we don't take that lightly. We know that's a big impact on the community. We want to get out there early and often to talk to the community about the impacts and how we can best mitigate those impacts, working with the community on that. The other thing about that, Brian mentioned this, is all that work in this design phase, you don't see a lot maybe happening and turning dirt on a lot of these projects, but all that work up front in design when you're looking at the utilities and where do they go, and the roadway design, and how does everything place, and what are the impacts on properties, and can we mitigate those impacts? All of that's so important to try to get as right as you can so you minimize that time out in the field during construction. And that's what helps us to minimize that time actually getting these projects constructed on the back end.
Good, thank you. So I'll look forward to driving and walking some of those completed roads soon. And I want to switch now to some questions from the audience. We're beginning to get several questions in, both here in the room as well as questions from people who are watching in the live stream. And a number of them are about Stagecoach, trees in general, and specifically about a certain big tree I'll bet that some of you are familiar with called Jolene. Mayor, I want to start by really putting this into context, and then we'll delve into it a little more deeply. Every road has its benefits. Every road has its challenges, right? Using Stagecoach as an example, today it's this winding two-lane road with curves and trees up against the pavement. It's got character, but it's also safe and challenging with increasing traffic on it. So I wish you'd start this part of the discussion by talking a little bit about what the city's trying to accomplish with turning Stagecoach into a major connector, the benefits, the challenges of that, and just in general, how does the city think about turning old country lanes into these modern roadways with tree preservation, trails, mobility?
Well, I think I would start by just saying that cities like Kyle have a unique set of challenges. We're different than some of the other, especially the northern suburban towns, who they're experiencing growth, but they already were of a certain size when the growth started to hit. Georgetown, Round Rock, Cedar Park, much larger towns with already established tax bases and higher level professional deliveries on government projects and infrastructure. Kyle was just 20 years ago. Kyle was just a very, very small town with a lot of culture and a lot of historic county roads that went through the city. And as the city has built out, basically we're growing the same way that Georgetown and Round Rock are growing, but we're starting at 5,000 people with no major infrastructure. And so the needs, they sort of come upon a city all at once as projects come online. And a lot of the development projects that were approved in we'll call it 2010 to 2015 range, or the actual projects you see now under construction, housing projects, for example. The challenge is if you're not already sophisticated enough to know how to cultivate good right-of-way projects, it can be very easy to miss things like an historic tree that you would never want to take down. You would much prefer to build around. But at the time that the projects were platted, they only look at right-of-way from one point to the other, and they don't take into consideration where there might be trees that would want to be preserved and roads that would want to go around that tree. So, for example, when Stagecoach was really, when the Stagecoach tree or Jolene or whatever we call it, the tree that was out there, it was doomed about 11, 12 years ago when the Cypress Forest subdivisions and the Six Creek subdivisions were entitled and platted, and the amount of right-of-way that was put in place was just the minimum amount needed for the width expansion that we're undergoing now. That creates a real challenge here in 2019 to 2025 when we've been working on that project. We don't really have a good solution. We have two options. Option number one is don't build the road, or at least don't build it correctly. And option number two would be to have to remove the tree. So it's been a real learning experience, I think, for the city council. I've voted on the tree, or I've had votes have been taken on the tree since I've been here, I think 4 or 5 times. Cut it down, let's move it. No, we need to cut it down because it seems crazy to try to spend so much money to move a tree. But no, we don't want to cut it down because it is an historic, old heritage tree that is, it means a lot to a lot of people. And so ultimately, the solution that we came to doesn't make anyone feel good. But we need to build out the road on Stagecoach so much that we're willing to spend the money from within the budget to move that tree. And so it's still going to be there, but it is a learning experience because if we could go back in time, 12 years ago, that could have been a conversation between the development team at the city and the developers who were entitling their project to let them know when we were in negotiations that this tree here in particular matters. So we're going to take an extra 30 feet of right-of-way or something along those lines along the western side of Stagecoach in preparation for moving that road around. And that would have been something we would have been able to accomplish at that time. Now it's houses and it's a retention pond. It's fully built stone walls and infrastructure, and the opportunity to move the road around is just not there. But the good news is we're in the process, and I think these guys can speak to it a lot, that we're actually going along our major corridors and identifying important pieces of infrastructure like trees to make sure we know where they are from the beginning, so that as we're engaging on road reconstruction, development deals, that we already have a policy in place that will make sure that we move around those trees moving forward. The tree, being able to preserve the tree along Stagecoach, I would say would have been great. That would have been everyone's number one preference. It just wasn't feasible given the constraints of the project at the time that we were looking at it. But the one more thing I will say about Stagecoach and why Stagecoach is so important. Yes, it's a county road, single lane that, or one lane each way, and then cuts down at the tree to basically a yield sign. But the subdivisions and neighborhoods and infrastructure that we are building really starts at Plum Creek. And on the other side of 2770, where that intersection is being improved by the Walgreens, not only are we widening that intersection, but we're putting in a segment of the Vibe Trail, which is a 12-foot wide multimodal pathway that will cut across into the new Stagecoach. And we'll run the entire length of Stagecoach and then turn down Center Street and go all the way to downtown. And what that means is at the completion of this project, not only will you have the ability to get through 2770 and 150 much better than you are now, but you'll have the ability to walk or ride a bicycle or take a low-speed vehicle even all the way from Plum Creek to our square. That's really what this is all about. It's about making vehicular traffic much better along that corridor, but it's also about connecting communities to commercial districts with pedestrian infrastructure. And that's on its way. I don't think people quite understand how much of a transformation this Stagecoach and Center Street project might stands to make in terms of quality of life impact on Hometown Kyle and Cypress Forest and Six Creeks and Plum Creek and all of those communities. But it's going to be substantial, and I can't wait to see it delivered.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate the observations on the evolution of cities, right? And you talked about lesson learned. And Mike and Rick, let me move to you. As we go forward, the mayor alluded to it some, but talk to a little bit. What is the city doing now as you look at new roads to think about trees, about natural resources in general?
Yeah, so definitely some lessons learned with Jolene, and we definitely want to take some care as we build these projects and see where there are other opportunities, maybe to preserve heritage trees, also to preserve green space, and looking for those placemaking opportunities where there might be a pocket green that we might be able to do something with. Even with Jolene, we're going to be relocating her about a quarter mile up the road on Old Stagecoach, and we're actually working with the developer to create a nice pocket green and lay that out so she'll have a nice landing spot, so to speak. And so everybody can go and enjoy her. She's going to be right along the Vibe Trail section as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to create a really nice space there. But now that we've kind of learned some lessons there, we want to look forward and say, are there other opportunities with these other projects? Where are those other opportunities to preserve potentially heritage trees, other green spaces, and also maybe create some placemaking opportunities? Because what you want to do with projects like this is, we understand that's an impact on the community, but you want to preserve as much of the character of the community as possible. And so where those opportunities might exist, it might be a public art opportunity. It could be just creating a nice space. We're doing some really nice aesthetics in our roundabouts. We have several roundabouts that are part of the program. So we're going to be looking for those opportunities, and we're beginning, and Rick can talk to this, but we're going to be looking at our trees kind of along our different road projects and kind of where those opportunities exist.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, to follow up on that, I guess one of the things, and we actually have a kickoff meeting tomorrow with a sub-consultant to go through and start looking at all the corridors and just taking another look and making sure that we've accounted for, significant trees or heritage trees and seeing if there's any opportunities along the way at this point in time. So it's something that I think we understand. We heard the concerns from the public, and we're working towards addressing those and also implementing, additional, down the road as new projects come on board, making sure that we keep the trees and, anything from an environmental standpoint, top of mind, and make sure that those are incorporated into kind of the design and decision process.
A number of questions continuing to come in, and invite audience members again to keep asking questions if you've got them. While we're over on Stagecoach, I want to take care of a few other questions, and then we'll move over to Button Lane and some things on the east side. First of all, Rick, while you've got the mic, why is Old Stagecoach in 3 segments?
Why is Old Stagecoach in 3 segments? A lot of it has to do with how the project's going to be delivered, traffic control, and it's generally a pretty long corridor within a congested area, constrained. So in order to try to manage that and make sure that we minimize the impact to the traveling public, it's been broken up, as well as making sure that we get some of the elements. For instance, the Center Street, what we call the Center Street off portion, has a roundabout. Being able to get in there and make some improvements there. First off, will help us facilitate the construction of the rest of the project. So, and then we have a couple of other on-system TxDOT projects on the bookends of those 3 projects that we're going to be delivering at a later date. So,
the mayor mentioned, as we were talking about Marketplace, the mayor mentioned that there's going to be trails running down that you think will be transformative, Mayor. And we have a question just about trails in general. What is the city's plan to incorporate trails into this whole scheme? And you might touch on, I know the city has a plan for something called the Vibe Trail. So maybe you could address that briefly and talk about how that intersects with this bond program.
I'll take a first stab at it. If you've ever been to Peachtree City, Georgia, this is really where the idea came from. We took a trip. We're trying to figure out which cities have the best connectivity from a pedestrian standpoint to get people around. And we went and looked at Peachtree City, as well as some other towns that have really great trail systems. There's 2 different kinds of trails. There's an urban trail that's designed for people to walk to get from place to place. And then there's the nature trail that's designed for discovery of nature and outdoor sporting and jogging. We are focused on both in the city of Kyle, but the Vibe Trail really is our central multimodal, extra-wide trail that we've been working on for many years now. I think 5 years is how long we've been working on this, to connect communities to commercial districts. That's the whole point, is if you're in your neighborhood and you want to go to H-E-B, or you want to go to the park, or you want to go to a restaurant, the only way to do it in the city of Kyle is to get in your vehicle. And the Vibe Trail was all about creating opportunities for people to have another pathway to get to commercial districts. And so it was of such importance to us that in 2022, when we called the bond, and even before that, when we started the engineering, that we incorporated the Vibe into every one of our road projects, as well as to any developer projects that are improving our network as well, that are not a part of this discussion today. All in told, there are dozens of miles of Vibe that are either completed, under design, under construction, or in our planning process. And when it's all said and done, you only get one shot at this. Once your city gets fully built out, it is so much, just as we talked about with the tree. If you don't do it first, if you're not thinking about it ahead of time, it's more expensive and more difficult to try to do it later. So I think we came up with the idea at just the right time. I think that by incorporating the Vibe into all of these road projects, that it's going to bring it to life. So 3 to 4 years from now, when these projects are starting to be delivered, no one's gonna question what is the Vibe, or does the city have major trail systems for up to low speed vehicles. It's going to be very self-evident that we've been planning for pedestrian infrastructure as well. So it's exciting. It's exciting to think about what's coming.
Thank you, Mayor. And Brian, just to follow up on that, we have a question about safety for pedestrians. Let me ask you, there's this vibe trail the mayor's just been talking about. Is that striped as part of the road, or what are the safety features? Describe the vibe trail a little bit for us.
Great question. So, no, it won't be striped. It'll be an open area that can be used by pedestrians, bicycles, golf carts, as the mayor mentioned, to go lots of different places. But there are also going to be sidewalks that'll be constructed as well. So the Vibe Trail is this intermodal system that we've come up with. But in addition to that, we'll have sidewalks constructed with each of the streets as well. So there'll be lots of opportunities for people to move safely through the corridors. And frankly, in a lot of these different roadways that we're working on, that's not able to be done right now. So this is going to really provide a lot of opportunities for people to travel and to do it safely. And I just want to piggyback on something the mayor said just a moment ago. The Vibe Trail is this really fantastic interconnected system that we're working on across the city. But part of the thought process has been behind it is to look at these nodes of activity that can be in certain parts of the city where you're actually going someplace. So as part of developments that we're looking at, we're trying to create areas of interest, areas that you would actually go to, they're destination spots that you'll have around the city. So these are actually going to be really interesting places that you can go. And as Mike mentioned, along the trail, trying to find these opportunities for placemaking and opportunities where people can actually enjoy nature, enjoy parts of the city that they haven't seen before because they've just been driving through it.
Right.
So it's exciting.
And Mike, in fact, those trails, my understanding is they won't be at grade, meaning they'll be separated from the road. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. There'll be a buffer from the road, and I think it'll be a really nice amenity for the community. And again, as the mayor and Brian said, I mean, it's just a part of our connectivity. I think when you say the road bond program, sometimes that's a little bit of a misnomer because you also have the largest Vibe Trail construction program. You have the largest sidewalk construction program. You have the largest transportation safety program as well, with all the improvements to the intersections and crossings we're doing as well. So there really is a lot in this program that's being done, yes, for roads, but all these other components to connectivity as well, which I think is really going to be impactful for the community, just like the mayor and Brian said.
We've got several questions on another part of town. And one of them I'm going to turn into a general question. It's really about Bunton and Lehman projects. But the question notes that since the pond's approval, growth hasn't just stood still in Kyle. You keep seeing more and more people wanting to come to this part of Texas. This person says 3,300 new households coming in. So the question is really, with all this continued growth, is the bond program sufficient? Is this going to get us where we need to be?
I'll take a stab at that. So I think the short answer is probably no in the long run, right? It's like we got to keep on looking forward and planning for that. And so in addition to the capacity that we're building out with the road bond, which is really, really needed, just like the mayor said, we're also kicking off a transportation master plan process. And so that will be looking forward as we're growing our population projections and then looking at how do we improve connectivity over the long term. And so it'll be looking at what we're doing now with the road bond and with other projects, but then also looking forward. So out of that transportation master planning effort, which will take about 12 months, we should be done with that about this time next year, we'll be getting those next set of improvements and projects that start to plan for that growth that we're anticipating, both from the private development side and the population side. It's gonna need more capacity, but also, to be truthful, I mean, I'm not sure we can keep on adding, lanes to a road project. We're going to keep on having impacts on communities and properties and things like that. So we definitely want to make sure that we're having a multimodal network, but how best to maximize those opportunities.
Thank you very much. And let's stay in that section of town for a second. Bunton Lane, it's as you alluded to, Mayor, some of these projects are complex, right? There's creek, there's gas lines, there's utility lines, there's electrical substations in this particular area. So how does the city, Mike, Rick, how does the city manage those kinds of obstacles? And what does that do to the timeline?
As far as managing, I mean, yeah, these projects are complex, like you said. It's not just going out there and building a roadway. We've got utilities, we've got stream crossings, we've got all these different features that right-of-way acquisition and minimizing the impact as much as we can. So there's a lot of things that go up front. Takes a long before, you know, you've got to go out there and figure out where are all these utilities and, you know, where are all these, you know, potential. So,
Thanks. We just, for those of you watching, we had a little mic trouble, but I think we've got it figured out.
Yep.
So, Rick, you might
Yeah.
kind of back up with the question was, you know, about all these complexities, and you were given a great answer. See if you can do it
yeah,
twice.
absolutely. Let's see if I can say it again here. So yeah, I mean these Button Creek and you know projects similar. There's a lot of complexity to them. You know, you talked about the utilities, for instance. I mean, there's a lot of things that you've got to do up front. You go out and you've got to determine where are all those utilities underground. You know, how do you minimize which ones need to be relocated? You know, and as far as water features, you know, it's you know trying to figure out where you've got to you know your drainage and your drainage features that you have to accommodate that. You know, not only the present you know runoff, but also there's an impact on runoff from you know development in the area. So there's a lot of complexity that needs to go into to deliver these roadway projects, and you know there's a lot of challenges, and you know that's why we're here is to help work through those challenges and come up with a successful project.
Is this something the city recognized in advance? Is that planned into the program and into the schedule?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you try your best to figure out how long it's going to take you. There's things that'll surprise you. You know, there's always going to be things and challenges in a project that you may not have anticipated fully. You know, when you started looking at it, you know, you start looking at it at a very preliminary level, and as time goes on, you start you know expanding and getting more detailed with your design. So. You know, you discover new features that you may not have identified early on. So,
Just going to add to that real quick. So if you look at some of the schedules that are online and also here in the room, you know, you'll see that utilities, that yellow line, and sometimes that line's pretty big on like projects like the BB project, and that's what Rick's talking about. All that time it takes to coordinate with utilities, coordinate with PEC, coordinate with water utilities, and make sure that you know where they are, you can account for them, you coordinate with them on any relocations, but also if you need to upgrade lines, there's a lot of upgrading of water utilities that we're doing as part of these projects as well. So I would say this is also a very significant utility project as well, because we're improving a lot of those. We're undergrounding a lot of utilities as well, the illumination as part of these projects. And so all of that takes a lot of coordination, takes a lot of time. But again, if we get that right up front, we'll be able to hit the ground running and get through construction and get those in place.
So you've told us it's not quite as simple as just going out and putting down some gravel and paving over it. There's a little more complexity to it. But when those roads really do get finished, when we get towards the end, talk a little bit more about what we're going to do about traffic management. We've talked about that a lot. Is that part of the plan? We have a question here about Button Lane in particular. You know, how is the city going to work with residents to manage that kind of traffic, to help people get to work, especially with so much uncertainty, right? COVID, people are getting back. Maybe a lot of state workers are going to be asked to come back to work, as this question noticed. So how do we work with residents?
Yeah, so as part of all of our projects, we do what's called a traffic control plan. So we'll look at how to keep traffic moving even when it's under construction. So let's say you know a Button Road goes under construction. We might do construction on one side, then go to the other side. You'll see some of the projects around here already. We'll take that approach on projects. We want to keep folks moving around, Kyle, but we know that there's an impact. We also know collectively there's an impact, and so recently we just talked to council about all the projects we're doing, on Center Street and Stagecoach, and talking about that we're going to take a lot of care in the traffic control plans. Again, working with the neighbors as well to see what their concerns are about getting in and out of their neighborhoods, moving around major corridors, and getting to other centers, and seeing how we can best support that through these traffic control plans as well. So we'll have to do some coordination within the project, but then we're also going to have to coordinate amongst the projects as well, and with other work that's happening, because we'll also continue with our street resurfacing and maintenance programs as well. We'll have to coordinate with what TxDOT's doing and with what Hays County is doing, because they also have projects they're doing as part of their 2024 bond program. So there's a lot of that coordination that needs to happen, but that's what we're working on right now.
Let me just real quick, one of the things is communication, right? I mean, we've got public outreach and making sure that the citizens are aware of the projects and traffic changes and switches and everything, so that you know what's going to be in front of you. Nothing comes as a surprise. So, and also, we're here to listen to when something's a success and when something's not so successful from a traffic, management standpoint, and make sure that we make and incorporate the necessary changes. So.
And you mentioned that the city, I believe, Brian, is going to be doing a lot of public outreach as you get to roads really going under construction. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been having multiple open houses with the residents. We go into different corridors around the city and try to connect with the residents in those areas to talk about it. And as road construction nears and gets ready to actually begin and commence, we'll be doing even more focused outreach on those particular areas when that happens. So everybody will know exactly what's going to happen, when that's going to happen, and constant communication throughout the project too. That's a big part of what we're going to be doing. Yes, sir.
I want to alert those in the audience and those watching that we may run a little over. We talked about going to 6:15 or 6:20, but if you members of the panel can stay, we're getting a lot of questions coming in. So I think we may extend a few extra minutes to try and get to as many of those as possible, if that's all right with you all. Well, great. We have a really interesting question about working with other entities. I think several of you mentioned that it doesn't happen in isolation, and there are these other roads. Mike, you mentioned city roads connect to county roads, connect to state roads. So we have a question about whether the city is working with TxDOT to address commute times and commute challenges into Austin. Particularly, they ask from the west side. Brian?
Well, I'll start, and I think maybe Mike or Rick can chime in on that. But yes, we're working very closely with TxDOT. We have a great relationship with the area engineering team from TxDOT. So we work closely on not only the roadways that are under construction, but also some of the major corridors through the city. 1626 is a great example of how that's going to be impacted with some of the other traffic. We are doing a roadway that's going on Kohlers underneath I-35. We'll be raising 35 up and going underneath that to go through the extension where Kohlers will go all the way down to Seton Hospital. So that's one where we have a lot of specific coordination with TxDOT on, but we're really working very closely with them. Mike, do you have any other items?
Yeah, just that. I'll take FM 150 as an example. So, we mentioned some of the improvements we're doing on Center Street. We're actually doing some components of, which is, sections of that are on FM 150 as well. So we're doing some improvements there, but also Hays County has a project that's called the Yarrington Extension, and that basically connects to 150, and that's basically going to be a bypass from the west to get to I-35. And so, we're looking at that connectivity. We're coordinating with Hays County on that project and TxDOT as well. I just had a meeting with them a few weeks ago to talk about coordination for projects like that. But we are looking at that and how we can work with TxDOT when our projects are either on system or they're connecting to their system, but also how we're connecting to the Hays County system as well. Because as I mentioned, we have a lot of our projects that are literally butting up right next to Hays County projects. So the coordination with them is going to be really important. For example, Hays County does have a project on FM 150 east of 35. And so I think they're going to be studying that corridor. We'll be looking at that corridor as well as part of our transportation master plan. And so, again, that coordination for everything that's going to be happening just along that one corridor is going to be really important, but just a good example of the coordination that's needed.
Let's stay on coordination for just a moment. A lot of the schools in the area are on state roads or county roads. And we have a question specifically about 2770, but I think it could be applied broader. Is the city working with the state or the county specifically on school hours and what to do about those crowded drop-off lanes when people, in this case, get out to Barton or Hays High School, but it could just as easily apply to some of the other schools in town?
Well, yeah, in the short time I've been here, we have talked a lot about that as far as kind of safe crossings to and from school. When schools are letting out, we know that these roads are getting busier and it becomes a safety issue. It already is a safety issue for students crossing some of the roadways like 2770. You mentioned Hays High School. And so we are looking at making improvements there and making some safe crossings there. But we're also going to be evaluating those other locations as well around schools. And so I'm going to be working with one of our consultant teams here in the near term to start to look at those areas, kind of what I call safe routes to schools. You start to look at those connectivity areas around schools, and are kids able to make it safely to and from school, from neighborhoods to schools, and what infrastructure is there, what crossings are there, what signage or signals are there. We'll be looking at all of those things here over the coming months.
If I could, just to add on to that, one of the other things that we're doing is working on a sidewalk master plan that'll be presented to the council in the next couple of months. And as Mike mentioned, what we're trying to look at is some of the gaps around the city of where are some connectivity gaps that we have and sidewalk segments that need to be added that really prioritize pedestrian, school crossings, children that are trying to get to school, that we make sure we have a good solid plan of how to do that and start putting those improvements in place to augment not only the things that we're doing on the road bond package, but all of the other transportation improvements that we're doing across the city. So it's really all of those things working together.
So a lot of this is really driven by growth, as you said. Why does the city let growth go on? If we're having this much growth and it's causing us to build roads, we have a question, why don't you just, Mayor, why don't you just say no new subdivisions?
There's sort of a broad answer to that question. There's a legal answer to that question and a philosophical answer to that question. At its broadest level, the cities do not regulate growth in the way that people sometimes think they do. We do not say, our job is not to decide who gets to come here, but to build out the infrastructure that allows people to come here. It's literally the mandate in the state constitution as far as powers that are vested with locality. So what we are tasked with is what is highest and best use? And that's a real philosophical question when development wants to come to the area. What's actually good for the city and what's not good for the city? And there's very different schools of thought on that as it relates to density in particular. The less dense you make a suburb, the more expensive it is to live in that suburb because you're dividing up your land amongst less people, but you still have the same amount of road to build and you have the same amount of pipes to lay. And so the argument then becomes, well, we want to allow for more vertical development, which gets a higher amount of revenue per acre that can then where more people are sharing the cost of community infrastructure. It is a very interesting philosophical discussion that can be had. I think from my perspective, the way I have always tried to view it is growth is coming. If you try to stop it by just saying no to everything, it will come anyway, and what you will get may not be as good as what you could have gotten had you engaged along the way. And I think that's always been the philosophy that I've taken. We do not say yes to every proposal. We probably say yes to a small fraction of the proposals that actually come to the city in various forms. So I can't tell you how many times people have come in and said, I want to do this or I want to do that. And the answer just was, that's just not going to work. A lot of those proposals never even make it to city council because staff will analyze them and give that feedback. But sometimes the ones that do also don't make it. But really, for me, what I'm looking at is a project going to be valuable long term? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, are we going to be thankful that we said yes to this project? And if the answer is yes, I think this is going to be a net positive to the community long term, then I don't think that it's wrong to support that. I think that that's probably for the best because these road projects, for example, and our $500 million water project that is about to come online this year, they have to be paid by someone. And so if you just say no to the new growth, then these projects that are coming on cause your taxes to go up tremendously because it's just more money required per person who's here. So the real sweet spot is in the balance between the people who are coming here and the projects that are coming online and the projects that the city is putting to run alongside that growth to keep up with that quality of life. Has anybody ever heard of Gatesville, Texas? I got a couple nods. Gatesville's my hometown. So if you go up to Waco and turn left and go about 45 minutes down Highway 84, eventually you get to this little town called Gatesville. And when I was born 40 years ago, the population of Gatesville was roughly 15,000. 40 years later, today, do you know what the population is? It's 15,000. It's the same. It's a town that was once much larger than Kyle and is now much smaller than Kyle. If you go and hang out with people who live in Gatesville and talk to them about what are the pressing needs, it will be our infrastructure is decaying before our eyes. The water lines we put in 40 years ago to service our house are now all completely shot, and we have to spend money to fix them. And they have a problem where their budget is not remotely up to par in terms of keeping up with their existing 40-year-old infrastructure. And so it's just, I guess it's just different. They got super excited when Walmart came to town. Here in Kyle, we are blessed with opportunity after opportunity for people to raise a family, to start a business, to get employment, to have a high quality of life with nearby parks. It's important to keep those things in mind. It's not all bad just because the commute during school hours is difficult. There are a lot of other good things that come from the growth. For example, 4 or 5 years ago, all I heard, and folks who've been around, they will know this is true, is that one of the top complaints is we don't have any restaurants in the city of Kyle, and in particular sit-down restaurants or something. It was just a constant complaint. If you want to get a good bite to eat, you had to go to South Park Meadows or down to San Marcos or something like that. Well, with the rooftops came the restaurants. And so in the last 3 or 4 years, we have opened more new restaurants than probably the rest of towns in Hays County combined. And that's because we finally reached that threshold where a restaurant became a good investment in the city. And so it's kind of neat to see some of those new amenities coming to the community. We have Costco now. We have a lot of great things that are coming. So I think philosophically, and it's you can't blink, you can't be afraid because the development's coming, and so you need to have your infrastructure projects coming alongside it, and you need to focus on how are we going to keep the quality of life where it is, and then potentially, if we do everything right, get the quality of life actually higher than where it was 20 years ago. You couldn't walk to downtown from far out 20 years ago, but maybe, just maybe, if we can deliver these projects, maybe you'll be able to do that, and that'll be a good thing.
Thanks, Mayor. And Brian, the mayor just talked pretty eloquently about, this balance that the city tries to strike between growth and maybe influencing growth and looking to the future. And one of the things he said was, if you believe the growth is coming, this is how you address it. And there's also a legal aspect, right? Because the city can't just step in and say, no growth. There's a thing called Chapter 212 of the Local Government Code that you can't just turn off the faucet, I don't think, can you?
Right. There's definitely legal restrictions on what the city can do, and it's a balance, as the mayor said, because you have property owners that want to develop. They want to develop their property. They should have the right to develop their property, and we're trying to work with them to try to provide the best value to the community when we do develop. So it is a balance.
We're here at Center Street, and we've got a question from Kate Johnson, a longtime leader of the Historic Society here in the county and in Kyle. And she just notes that there are some important historic properties right here on Center Street where one of the projects is planned. The Catherine Ann Porter House, a famous writer, for those of you who don't know, and some sites related to Mary Kyle Hartson, the first woman mayor of Kyle, a famous mayor here in the city. So can you talk to us just a little bit about what the city's going to do to try and preserve those sites here and on other projects across the city, cultural sites? We've talked about green. How does the city address preserving character?
Yeah, that's actually a big part of what we're trying to do. And again, we try to take care as we're designing these projects to, put the improvements in place, but also see what's next to the improvements and where are people trying to get to. And so we definitely understand, and I'm learning very, very quickly, the history and legacy of Kyle, and I very much respect that. And I think as we're designing these projects, we just want to make sure people have good access, to continue to have good access, to the libraries, to the historical buildings, to the amenities, as the mayor mentioned, that are coming online. And that's really what this is about. It's not about, trying to push anything like that out. It's just how do we maintain that access? And when it comes to impacts on properties, we try to mitigate that as much as possible. The best way to to kind of deal with property impacts is just to not have them. And so we try to do that as much as possible in our design. But where we have them, we try to be very careful where it's, we're trying to take, small parcels or slivers and not try to have major impacts on properties as well. So we're trying our best to preserve that character and legacy of Kyle as best we can, and hopefully have good access to those.
When you talked about legacy, you mentioned roundabouts, and there's going to be roundabouts here on Center. And I have a couple of questions about these crazy things called roundabouts. Like they're incredibly unsafe. Why are you even thinking about them here in Kyle? I say that facetiously, but I know that's what a lot of people are concerned about. It's something new for the community. Mayor, I see you itching to answer this question. Why is the city thinking about changing up the traditional intersection?
Well, so on its surface, from an engineering standpoint, roundabouts have been studied extensively. And there's two things you have to know about a roundabout that's put at the right intersection. Number one, 50% increase in traffic flow through the intersection as compared to a signalized intersection. That's 15 cars go through for every 10 on a traditional intersection. And number two, 90% reduction in traffic-related fatalities and nearly 90% reduction in major injury collisions that cause injuries. So and this is not sample size, this is industry-wide, global-wide, the rule on roundabouts is that they get more vehicles through and they are much safer. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? So if you think about on Kohlers, we're about to break ground later this year on 3 different roundabouts, Kohlers and Sanders, Kohlers and Benner, and Kohlers and Cromwell, 3 back to back to back. They're double lane roundabouts. But if you're at Kohlers right now, let's say you're getting a coffee at Summer Moon, and then you want to go to Barton, or you want to go to Hayes, you want to turn west, you have to play Frogger in order to get across. There's 2 lanes of traffic coming this way, plus a turn lane. There's 2 lanes of traffic heading west, plus a turn lane. There's traffic coming across you, and then there's also traffic beside you. And the traffic is moving. And if it's a green light, it may be that it will slow some of that down. But generally, you have to really keep your head on a swivel in order just to get across. Well, that's a lot of different points where a collision can happen. You can get hit, and I've seen them. I saw it happen on Kohlers and Sanders just a couple years ago. Someone pulling in on Sanders and goes behind because of the 2-lane feature, goes behind one and just T-bones into the other. A roundabout completely eliminates that point of contact where that lady who was trying to get home got T-boned. And so when you're entering a roundabout, all you have to do is look to your immediate left. You have 1 lane, or in some cases 2 lanes of traffic that is slowed down, not because we put some artificial light up and said, please slow down, because the design of the roundabout is configured in such a way that they are forced to slow down to a safe level coming through that roundabout. And if you have an opening to go, you can turn in. If someone turns down your street, that creates your opening to fill that spot. Whereas if it's a signalized intersection, it's just these cars are going and everyone else has to stop. And then when they stop, you have to wait for a safe amount of time. The intersection's completely dead, and then another light will flash, and then new cars start going. All of that dead space is what causes traffic lights to be inefficient. So the city of Kyle has known for a long time that roundabouts are a superior intersection infrastructure component compared to signalized intersections for a lot of particular spots in town. But one thing that's still an obstacle is what I tell people this all the time: 90% reduction in traffic-related fatalities, 50% increase in efficiency, and the response is always, well, but yeah, maybe in Spain, but here in Texas, people don't know how to drive roundabouts. Well, couple things about that. Number one is that we can learn new things. That is possible for us to learn new things. If you look at the data for adoption of a roundabout in a community that does not have a roundabout, there's normally more than half of the people, we'll say the approval would be 35 to 40% of the people would say, yes, I want that roundabout. 1 year after construction is complete, if you survey the same people, it goes to 2/3. Literally, it flips on its head because of how much more efficient roundabouts are and how much safer they are. If you want to really take it to the next level, however, what you don't do is just put one roundabout over here and one roundabout over here. You're going through signal, 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 roundabout. What you do is you build a corridor of roundabouts, which is what we're starting on. This is why the Kohlers Roundabouts projects are so important. So the plan is, if you were to leave Hayes High School heading east on Kohlers, you'll hit a roundabout at Sanders, then you'll hit a roundabout at Benner, then you'll hit a roundabout at Cromwell, then you'll go through 1626. That's not being changed as of just right now. And then you'll hit a roundabout at Kohlers and Marketplace. Then you'll hit a roundabout at Kohlers and Kyle Crossing. And then when Kohlers goes underneath I-35, we're in talks with TxDOT, who prefers roundabouts. They champion roundabouts, potentially having roundabouts at the access roads on I-35. That's still a discussion. Then you keep going through, and you'll hit a roundabout at Kohlers and Beebe, and then all of a sudden you're at the hospital. Well, what does that mean for people who are driving every day along that stretch? Number one is you're going to get really good at driving roundabouts very quickly. You're going to do one after the other, and it's like building muscle memory. Our community will get much better. I'm convinced of this. They'll get much better. When they first open up, it's going to be a little touch and go. But again, it'll be slow touch and go because you have to slow down at a roundabout. But eventually, you'll be able to go from Hayes High School to Seton without having to stop, except potentially at 1626. That's what the long-term vision is for roundabouts. But it's not just that corridor. That's the starting corridor. We have roughly 27 roundabouts funded, 2 double-lane, full-on roundabouts funded in the city and in this project as well as elsewhere. And when they're all completed and constructed, we're going to be known as a roundabouts town, and I think that is going to be to our credit long-term. If you look at other towns who have adopted similar philosophies, Frisco is one. They're building roundabouts all over town, and the more they build, the more people want more roundabouts. You just see it happening town after town. Carmel's up to, I think, 300 roundabouts.
You mentioned Carmel, Mayor. I know about this because you and I have talked about it before. I think you talked to the mayor of Carmel. They were one of the first cities in the country to really start making roundabouts a thing. What was the experience in Carmel?
I've been to Carmel several times over my 9 years here, taking new council members and new folks up. Look at this city. Look at how they've designed their infrastructure. Let's get in an Uber and let's just drive around town. Decide for yourself. Carmel is very populous, much more densely populated than the city of Kyle, and they have built hundreds of roundabouts over Mayor Brainerd's career, over a 25-year career. They have roundabouts on all their freeway exits. Think about a roundabout. Like, what happens when the electricity goes out if you have a signalized intersection? Like Snowmageddon, Snowpocalypse. Remember when that happened and we lost all of our signals? Well, we've got first responders needing to get places, and the power's out. Or maybe it's a cyber attack, or something along those lines that causes. That's a huge problem for first responders. Well, when you're driving around in Carmel, it doesn't matter if the power is out. The grid, the transportation grid, still functions. And I don't know that I ever had to stop at a single roundabout, including on their access roads, on their freeways. And people drive them. They understand how to drive them. And the quality of life based on that decision to build out their city with a roundabouts first policy has made just a tremendous impact on the quality of life, which is why when you go there and you talk to people, they absolutely love their roundabouts. And I hope Kyle will become that way someday soon.
Thanks. For those of you in the audience, if you need to go, I know we're running up against what we said was the time limit. We're going to stay for just a few more minutes to try and get to some of these questions. By the way, for those of you who are watching at home, if we don't get to your question here, I think city staff will be answering them. Isn't that right, Rachel? We'll be answering those questions directly for you. But we're going to get to as many as we can. And we'll kind of go into lightning round, guys, to try and knock these out fast. One question that we've gotten here is, how did the city choose these projects? So I guess the question for you is, all these on the bond package, were all these presented to voters? Have they all been approved by voters?
You'd be surprised to know. What do you think the original proposed bond package was? The 294 number that we came to was after cutting and paring down. It was originally over 400 million, and it starts from our transportation master plan. We're not just cherry picking roads, but I'll let the other guys speak to this. But it certainly came from a place of planning.
Came from planning, and Brian, they were all approved by voters.
That's right. November of 22, large majority, I think it was 65% of the city approved the road package. So it is approved by the voters.
And can you just move that money around, or do you have to spend it on the roads that you promised as part of the bond?
No, great question. No, it has to be spent on the roadways itself. That's correct.
And we have a similar question about how they were chosen, but this one has a different emphasis. Why is this so focused on the east side?
Because the east side didn't develop out in the same way as the west side did. The west side started with major road projects. That's really what birthed West Kyle, which is the HEB 1626 Kyle Parkway and Kohler's Crossing projects, as well as the state roads that are around those projects. East Kyle has a lot of old county roads that have been absorbed into the city. And as a result, there are a lot more roads that are in need of repair and reconstruction. We wanted to make sure that when we proposed this bond package that we were focused on the east side, because there are a lot of folks who live on the east side, and these road projects are just extremely important. So that was, and also the Hays County bond from last year had a very similar philosophy. The majority of their road projects were on the east side of Hays County as well. First time ever, back-to-back 2022, 2024, City of Kyle and Hays County both putting their money where their mouth was and making major commitments to improve east side infrastructure. We think that's a very good thing, and it will, because the best, highest quality development follows the highest quality infrastructure. And so if the west side of Kyle's got great roads, well, then you want to do a development project, you're going to go where the good roads are. Maybe if you're more of a cheap developer and you want to just build to the lowest cost and aren't really worried about infrastructure, maybe that's why you go to the east side. We do not like that narrative at all. Building out our east side infrastructure and making West Kyle have access to the east side and East Kyle having access to the west side, and building up that infrastructure is how we get high quality retail and mixed use development projects on the east side, which also, not only does the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, improve the quality of life, but it brings development that improves quality of life, because the development you get with good infrastructure is better than the development you would get with bad infrastructure.
In fact, talking about that east side and west side, I know that you all have been working with several different potential developers about trying to connect east side, west side with your trail system. And that I bring that up because we now have questions from 3 separate folks that I'm going to try and combine about trails. It's really, when do we get a final approved Vibe Trail plan? And from someone else, will that connect to the broader trail system out in Austin with the Violet Crown Trail or the trail that's planned between Austin and San Antonio, the Great Springs Trail?
I'll start. Yes, there are plans to connect that with the Great Springs Trail, and we're going to be having several sections that will be open soon on the Vibe. So one of those with Marketplace will be constructed. It's being constructed as part of that project, which we hope to have that project ready in July. That's a very large section of the Vibe Trail, and then it has to connect down to the Burleson section, and you'll be able to go all the way from Kohler's down to the downtown area on that trail, which is really exciting. But all those trails are meant to be interconnected.
Without crossing 1626
Yes,
at
sir.
grade. So let's just, because I don't think people understand that, you're going to be able to go from the Public Safety Center on the Vibe Trail, get golf cart, bicycle, stroller, jog, however, whatever means of transportation you want. You come down Marketplace, and then you're going to come underneath 1626, where the rail crossing, where the grade separation is. You know, 1626 is an overpass. The trail will come underneath that, so you don't even have to cross at 1626 into Cava, Spoon and Fork, and then to Marketplace and down to Burleson and downtown. That's what connecting your community, and it's taken years for us to put that together, but it's super helpful. It's just one of the
Right. It'll be right around the new 1626 take point that we have for water. You see the water tanks across from HEB, that area.
And related, as you talk about getting back and forth across the interstate, Kohler's Crossing, the expansion there will will be one of the vehicles for that. And we have a specific question about Rick or Mike, will there be sidewalks? Will there be pedestrian access on Kohler's Crossing?
Yes, there will be pedestrian access, and that's a part of that whole cross-section that we're building out. And so, again, we mentioned coordination with TxDOT. That's a big coordination partnership with TxDOT to get that underpass built. But it'll be a really, really nice connection, and yes, it will be multimodal.
And with all that construction going on, how are you going to mitigate this? You've talked about this a little bit, but somebody asked specifically, have you considered working at night when construction gets underway, Rick?
Absolutely, we've considered it. I mean, there's challenges there too. I mean, depending on where you are. I mean, if you're in the middle of Old Stagecoach Road, you're not going to want to do nighttime work. If you're out on one of these greenfield projects, where you're not going to be disruptive to the neighborhoods and people sleeping and everything, there's some opportunities there, to accelerate the construction and actually utilize nighttime construction. So, depending on the project, we will put restrictions on when a contractor can work. Hey, you can't close a lane during peak hours, or hey, you can or cannot work at night. So there's restrictions that are placed, but it's really dependent on a project by project. We look at each project separately, and the impacts that it might have. So
if you're looking at each project separately, will you be coming up with a traffic mitigation plan and how to work on those projects for each project?
Well, absolutely. I think Mike mentioned it, traffic mitigation. I mean, we develop a traffic control plan, which, basically looks at how you're going to move traffic in and around and through, a project while it's under construction. You're trying to maintain the existing capacity that's out there today. Obviously, these roads are going to expand the capacity, but we certainly don't want to, during the actual construction phase, minimize, what we have today. So we're making sure that we maintain that. So.
Keeping pace here, moving on. Somebody wants to know, are there plans to make downtown cooler, back the way it used to be while you're working on Center Street? And Mike, I heard you mention placemaking, so maybe this is time just to, Brian or Mike or the mayor, maybe you can just talk about what do you mean when you say placemaking, and how does that relate to making things cooler?
Yeah, well, I'll start with what I mentioned with placemaking is that, so what you're looking for are these just spaces around the different corridors where you have an opportunity to do something cool. Whether it's art, whether it could be some, green infrastructure, some landscaping, some trees, whatever that is that can really preserve the character of the neighborhood, of the community. We did some of that. I came from City of Austin and worked on their bond programs. We found like 50 placemaking opportunities in their bond program, and then we looked for those opportunities to work with local artists to come up with some art that was reflective of local communities. And so I think, there's definitely those types of opportunities here as well.
Brian?
Well, I was just going to say, we had a visioning workshop with the city council just a few weeks ago, and we talked about a lot of opportunities to make some of these placemaking options for downtown, looking at just directly across the road here with the depot and how we connect to that, maybe some pocket park opportunities, maybe even closing a road or two down in this area to make this a more walkable area. I think the park is a tremendous amenity to downtown. Everybody loves the park, and how do you make that more connected and more easily accessible? So those are things that we're looking at. We've been talking about that with the council.
We have one last question from somebody on the website, and then we're going to move up to a couple of big picture questions and kind of close up. It's about right-of-way. So we've talked about roads, about trails. If you need somebody's property, are you going to let them know? How do you let them know? What can they expect?
Yeah, so we do that a lot. There's a couple hundred different parcels of property that we're acquiring for the road bond package. So we work with each property owner to make sure they know what the project is, what is the impact. We make sure they know their rights through the process. They'll get an appraisal for the property. Then they can go through a process to negotiate on the transaction for us and to try to get to something that's fair and reasonable for the property owner. If we cannot agree with the property owner or what the price is, they have the right to go to a special commissioner's hearing and argue for the property's value, and then we have to abide by that commissioner hearing value that they determine. So we go through a very rigorous process to make sure we try to be fair with every property owner and make sure that they're compensated appropriately.
Just really quickly, Rick, when you've got projects like this that stretch over years, you've got inflation, And now we have a lot of uncertainty nationally about how tariffs may or may not affect the economy. Has the city planned for this? Do you take into account inflation? How can we be sure that these roads are going to get built?
Absolutely. I mean, at the beginning, back in 2021, when, we put together these projects and came up with the number of projects in the $294 million budget, we incorporated, contingency, additional money set aside for the unknowns. As we all know, since 2021, and, there's been a lot of challenges with inflation. And so, there are challenges in front of us, but, we have developed a good plan to overcome those challenges and to ensure that we're going to deliver the projects that we promised under the original bond, issuance. So certainly challenges.
Well, listen, thank you everyone for all the questions, and we're going to move towards closing up. We started in the very beginning talking about, Mike, the first road that you thought was going to come online. That looks like it's going to be Marketplace Avenue and the extension there. And I guess it's a question for you, Brian. With that first road coming on, are there any plans to recognize that, celebrate that? When is that going to get opened? And is the city going to do anything special?
Absolutely. We definitely want to have a ribbon cutting for that road. It's a major project and our first project to deliver out of the road bond package. So we will definitely be having a ribbon cutting, a community event to celebrate that. I know the mayor will be right there at that. It's a long time coming for the community and for all of those that have worked so hard on it. So we're definitely going to celebrate it. Absolutely.
So, Mayor, everybody here is invited. Is that right? Is that what I hear?
Yes.
Well, listen, thank all of you for your patience, staying a little bit of extra time to get to these questions. Thank those of you in the audience here and those at home who asked a lot of really good, insightful questions. We'll be monitoring the website. If a few questions come in late, you can look for an answer for us either on the site or back in your email. And this concludes our live stream event. If you're watching at home and want to come down, there are some boards here. We'll have city officials and the engineers, the members of the panel here for a little while to answer your questions. You can come down and learn even more. You can also go to kyleroadbond.com. There you can find maps, you can find presentations that have been made, you can find budgets, all the information your heart desires about road bonds and things transportation in Kyle. We thank you again, and with that, you guys, one last thank you, and we're dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.